Hello and welcome back to jimmurphymp.com, a way of keeping in touch with local news and national political news. The big stories this week are about the dual resignations, one of which I found really pretty sad and the other I think was unavoidable. I'm here in East Renfrewshire. I've just been out campaigning all afternoon and surprisingly no one raised it. No one raised the resignation of Alan Johnson or Andy Coulson, and I think that I was surprised by it. But sometimes when I'm out campaigning, don't raise issues, I sometimes think the issue that the media in London and politicians are obsessed by has no resonance outside of the village of Westminster and outside the kind of political elites and journalistic elites. But I don't think that's the case in this instance. These are both really big stories. As I said, I'm surprised no one raised it on the doorstep for the few hours I was out campaigning today. On Alan Johnson's situation, I think that I was shocked by it and surprised by it. I totally understand it. Politicians are entitled to private lives, and I don't enjoy the kind of different speculation that's going on around about that. But people are entitled to their privacy. I think he's a great loss to the Labour Party. He's risen through the Labour Party and the trade union movement without gathering around him a great group of kind of political enemies, and that's a remarkable achievement in British politics and any type of politics, to have no identifiable political enemies. He's a real gentleman, and I think that people focus on his humble beginnings, and of course that's just a fact of his life, but it's much more about what he achieved when both a trade union leader and also as a very senior government minister that he'll be remembered as. So I think we just all have to respect his privacy, his family's privacy, but he's a real miss to the Labour Party. But I think Ed Balls will continue with the approach that Ed Miliband and Alan Johnson have set out, exposing the government, the fact they're making cuts that are far too deep, far too quickly, and hurt families and businesses across the country, and also remaining credible on deficit reduction and keeping Labour as a pro-business party, that mainstream moderate party that we have become over the years, and we're determined to stay. Now, of course, that's Alan's resignation, which I found very sad because he's a friend of mine. Andy Coulson, on the other hand, I don't know. Beyond doubt, he is and was talented at what he did. Very talented as an editor in the News of the World, and clearly worked very hard for David Cameron, but I think it was inevitable, and perhaps now we'll get to the bottom of what actually was and wasn't happening in the News of the World now that Andy Coulson is no longer working at David Cameron's right elbow. Now, I think the bigger issue about Andy Coulson's resignation is at least in part about David Cameron's judgment. Of course, Coulson gave David Cameron an insight into the life that he and very few of his closest advisors have. David Cameron is different from Andy Coulson. Andy Coulson seems to be more in touch with the instinct and the pulse of Middle Britain. David Cameron, George Osborne and many others around are kind of eaten, born and bred. And I don't criticise them for that. David Cameron and George Osborne can't help that they were born into a life of privilege and grew up in a life of privilege. I don't think less of them for it. It's not their fault. But the fact is that's the life that they have led in terms of their financial well-being and financial income. And Coulson gave them something different. So I think it's an issue about judgment for Cameron, but it also means his team is a good deal weaker. So we'll look with keen interest as to who replaces him. It's clear that there'll be probably a more cautious approach, a more cautious appointment, because to lose one director of communications raises questions of judgment. To lose two would raise some very serious doubts about what's happening inside Downing Street. That's all for now. As usual, get in touch if you wish by email, by blog, by Twitter, or Facebook, or in the old-fashioned way, put a pen in your hand and write to me at the House of Commons. Cheers. Bye-bye.